Hey there. Welcome back to Red Moon Diaries. Today we are diving into more scary stories. So turn the lights off and let's dive right in. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I found something in my father's attic that's turned my entire world upside down. I've been staring at it for 3 days now, and I still can't process what it means. I need to tell someone before I lose my mind completely. My dad passed away last month from cancer. He was 71, lived a quiet life as an accountant, never so much as got a speeding ticket. The kind of man who helped neighbors with their taxes and coached Little League for 20 years. Everyone at his funeral called him a saint. While cleaning out his house, I found an old briefcase wedged behind some Christmas decorations in the attic. It was locked, made of brown leather that had cracked with age. There was a faded label on the handle that read, Father's Day 1973, in my dad's handwriting. I figured it was probably old financial documents or maybe some sentimental items from when I was born. Dad was always nostalgic about my childhood. I took a crowbar to the locks, expecting to find baby photos or report cards. What I found instead has haunted me every waking moment since. The briefcase contained 13 newspaper clippings, all yellow with age, all reporting unsolved murders from 1973. But these weren't from our hometown. They were from all over the country: Seattle, Denver, Memphis, Phoenix, Detroit. Different victims, different methods, but all occurring between March and June of 1973. A waitress in Seattle found strangled behind a diner. A college student in Denver discovered in his dorm room with his throat cut. A businessman in Memphis shot execution style in a hotel parking lot. Each article described the same thing. No suspect, no witnesses, no apparent motive. Random killings that police assumed were unconnected. But they weren't random. They couldn't be, because underneath each newspaper clipping was a photograph. Black and white, slightly blurry, like they were taken from a distance with a cheap camera. And in every single photograph, standing somewhere in the background of each crime scene, was my father. Not my 71-year-old father, who died last month. My father, as he would have looked in 1973. 26 years old, lean, wearing different clothes in each photo, but always the same cold expression I'd never seen on his face before. In the Seattle photo, he's across the street from the diner, leaning against a lamppost. In Denver, he's standing at the edge of the crowd of onlookers gathered outside the dorm. In Memphis, he's visible through the hotel lobby window, reading a newspaper. At the bottom of the briefcase was a small notebook filled with my father's meticulous handwriting, dates, times, locations, and what appear to be detailed observations about each victim's daily routines. Names of the hotels he stayed at, rental car information, even receipts for meals. The final entry, dated June 18, 1973, simply read, Project complete. Time to go home and start a family. No one will ever know. June 18, 1973 was Father's Day. It was also exactly 9 months before I was born. I've been going through every detail of my childhood, looking for signs I missed. Dad's business trips that lasted weeks at a time. His insistence on paying for everything in cash. The way he'd sometimes stare off into space with that same cold expression from the photographs. How he never let me or Mom go through his things. But mostly, I remember how good he was to me. How he taught me to ride a bike, help with homework, never missed a baseball game. He was my hero. The worst part isn't discovering that my father might have been a serial killer. The worst part is what I found yesterday when I decided to research those unsolved cases online. 3 of them have been solved in recent years. DNA evidence, new witnesses coming forward, modern forensic techniques. 3 different men were convicted and are currently serving life sentences for murders my father apparently committed. 3 innocent men are rotting in prison for what my father did. I've been carrying this briefcase around for 3 days, paralyzed by what to do next. Do I go to the police? Do I destroy the evidence and let those men stay in prison? Do I try to convince myself this is all some sick coincidence? But I know it's not a coincidence. Because yesterday, while going through more of Dad's things, I found something else. A second briefcase. This one labeled Father's Day 1998. It's locked, and I can hear papers rustling inside when I shake it. I'm holding the crowbar right now, but I can't bring myself to open it. Because 1998 was the year I graduated high school. The year Dad was so proud of me. Took me on that special camping trip to celebrate. The camping trip where we stopped in 4 different cities on the way home. For cities where I now remember Dad insisting we stay in hotels instead of camping, where he'd disappear for hours at a time, telling me he was handling some business. My hands are shaking as I write this. The crowbar feels impossibly heavy. I think I know what I'm going to find in that second briefcase. And I think I know why Dad was so insistent about that camping trip. I think he was teaching me. The lock just clicked open. I can see newspaper clippings inside. And photographs. God help me. There are photographs of me in some of them. I've kept this secret for 18 years, but I can't carry it alone anymore. What happened to my father at our family cabin in 2005 destroyed our lives, and I'm terrified it's happening again. My dad was the strongest man I knew. 6'4", former Marine, hands like steel from 30 years of construction work. He'd built our hunting cabin himself in the deep woods of northern Michigan, and every Father's Day weekend, we'd make the pilgrimage there, me, my younger sister Emma, and Mom. The cabin sat in a clearing surrounded by towering pines that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. Dad always said those trees had been watching over our family for generations. He'd inherited the land from his father, who'd inherited it from his father before him. This place is in our blood, he'd tell us while we roasted marshmallows by the fire. That Father's Day weekend started normally. We arrived Friday evening, unpacked our gear, and Dad immediately began his ritual inspection of the property. He walked the perimeter every trip, checking for fallen branches, animal damage, anything that might threaten his sanctuary. But when he came back from that first walk, something was different. He kept glancing over his shoulder toward the tree line, and his usual booming laugh seemed forced. When I asked if everything was okay, he just nodded and muttered something about probably just a deer. Saturday was worse. Dad barely touched his breakfast and spent most of the day sitting on the porch, staring into the forest. Every few minutes, he'd stand up suddenly, like he'd heard something, then sit back down when nothing emerged from the trees. "There's someone out there," he whispered to Mom when he thought Emma, and I couldn't hear. I can feel them watching. Mom suggested we head home early, but Dad refused. "I'm not running for my own damn property," he said, but his voice shook when he said it. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to use the bathroom. Dad's bed was empty. Through the window, I saw him standing at the edge of the clearing in just his boxer shorts and t-shirt, no shoes, no jacket, despite the 40-degree night. He was perfectly still, facing the forest. I was about to go get him when I saw it. Movement between the trees. Not an animal. Too tall, too deliberate. A figure, darker than the shadows, weaving between the pines about 50 yards behind the tree line. It seemed to be following the perimeter of our clearing, always staying just visible enough to be noticed. Dad raised his hand and waved. The figure stopped moving. Then Dad started walking toward the forest, barefoot, like he was in a trance. I wanted to scream, to wake everyone up, but I couldn't move. I watched my father disappear between those ancient pines, following something that shouldn't have existed. We found him an hour later, 2 miles deep in the woods, standing in a perfect circle of dead trees. His feet were torn and bleeding. But he didn't seem to notice. He was whispering the same phrase over and over. "The man behind the trees knows my name. The man behind the trees knows my name." When we tried to talk to him, he looked right through us with these empty, terrified eyes. The paramedics said he was in shock, but they couldn't explain why he wouldn't stop whispering those words. He never spoke again. Not a single word in 18 years. The doctors called it selective mutism brought on by severe psychological trauma, but they couldn't tell us what had traumatized him. Dad just sits by his bedroom window now, staring out at the oak tree in their backyard, his lips moving silently. We sold the cabin immediately. No one in our family has been back to those woods since. But here's why I'm writing this. Last week, Emma called me in tears. She'd been camping with her husband in northern Michigan. Not near our old cabin, but close enough. She woke up at 3 a.m. to find her husband standing at the edge of their campsite, staring into the forest. "There's someone out there," he told her, "between the trees. He's been watching us all night." When she looked where he was pointing, she saw it too. A tall figure moving deliberately through the pines, always staying just visible enough to be noticed. Her husband started walking toward the forest. She managed to stop him, packed up their gear, and they drove home immediately. But he hasn't been the same since. He keeps whispering about the man behind the trees, and Emma says his eyes have that same empty, terrified look Dad had. I think whatever took my father's voice that night is still out there, still hunting, and I think it's spreading. If you're planning to go camping in northern Michigan, please be careful. If you see movement between the trees at 3 a.m., don't investigate. Don't wave. And whatever you do, don't follow. Because the man behind the trees knows your name too. Do not forget to like and subscribe. I've never told anyone the full truth about what happened to my brother Mike. On Father's Day 2011, the police closed the case years ago, but I can't. I won't, because what I witnessed that day still haunts every barbecue, every family gathering, every time my phone rings unexpectedly. It was supposed to be perfect. Dad's first Father's Day since his heart attack, and we planned this elaborate backyard celebration. Mike had driven down from Portland with his new girlfriend, Sarah, and our whole extended family was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the works. The kind of gathering that makes you feel grateful to be alive. Mike was in his element, flipping burgers on Dad's ancient grill, cracking jokes and making Sarah laugh. He'd been struggling with depression for years, but that day he seemed genuinely happy. Light, like he'd finally found his way back to us. Around 3 p.m., his phone started buzzing. He glanced at it, frowned, and let it go to voicemail. It happened again 5 minutes later. Then again, the fourth time it rang, his face went completely white. "I need to take this," he said, walking toward the back of our property where the old oak tree stood. "It's about work." But I saw the caller ID as he walked past me. It just said unknown. Sarah asked if everything was okay, and I told her Mike would be back in a minute. We kept eating, kept laughing, kept celebrating. Dad was telling his stories about coaching Little League, and Mom was fussing over whether potato salad needed more mayo. 20 minutes passed. Sarah started getting worried, so I walked back to check on him. The oak tree stood alone. Mike was gone. His phone lay on the ground beneath the branches. Screen cracked, like it had been dropped from a height. But Mike was only 5 feet 8 inches. He couldn't have dropped it that hard. Unless he'd been climbing, which made no sense. I picked up the phone and saw 17 missed calls from unknown, all within the past hour. The voicemails were just static, except for the last one. In the last one, I could hear Mike's voice, distant and distorted, saying, "I have to go with them. Tell Dad I'm sorry." We searched everywhere. The police came with dogs, helicopters, the whole works. They combed through miles of forest behind our house, dragged a nearby creek, interviewed everyone twice. The last anyone had seen of Mike was him walking toward that tree. Phone pressed his ear. The detective told us about the muddy fingerprint they found on his phone, a partial print that didn't match anyone in our family or the FBI database. It was smudged, like whoever left it had been wearing gloves that were wet with something thick and dark. But here's what I never told the police, what I've never told anyone. I went back to that oak tree the next morning, and there were markings in the dirt, not footprints. Something else. Circular impressions, about the size of dinner plates, leading away from the tree toward the forest. They looked almost like suction marks. The really terrifying part? Mike's phone kept receiving calls from unknown for 3 days after he disappeared. Always at 3 p.m. Always just static. Until the final call, when I heard something in the background that made me smash the phone with a hammer. It was Mike's voice, screaming. That was 12 years ago. We held a memorial service. Dad never really recovered, and Sarah moved across the country. Life went on. Sort of. But yesterday, my phone started buzzing at 3 p.m. Unknown caller. I let it go to voicemail. The message was just static, but at the very end, I heard something that made my blood freeze. A whisper, barely audible. Tell them I'm still here. It was Mike's voice. I'm writing this because the calls haven't stopped. They're coming every hour now, and each time, his voice is getting clearer, more desperate. In the last one, he said something that's keeping me awake. They're coming for you next. The barbecue is just the beginning. My phone is buzzing again. It's 3 a.m. The caller ID says unknown. But I can see Mike's name appearing letter by letter, like someone is typing it in real time. I don't think I should answer. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on the video.